Welcome to the Open Treasury Podcast, your go-to source for the latest news and analysis in corporate cash and treasury management. This show is brought to you by CTMfile.com and the Treasury News Network, where Treasury professionals learn and share the information that matters most. And now your host, Jack Large.
Hello and welcome to our Open Treasury podcast. And I'm here again with Craig Jeffery, Managing Partner, Strategic Treasurer, and we're going to review the important topics that we've covered in the last 2 weeks on CTMfile. It's been a revolutionary couple of weeks in some ways, Craig. If you look at the items we had on global system changes, they were really quite significant. I mean, the one, it's a mundane thing, but payee checking, confirmation of the payee name, cross-border. It's the first one has been implemented in between France and Netherlands. But this has global implications. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I am as well. I think this is one of those items that makes me happy. This idea of confirming names, the idea of confirmation as a way of both preventing mistakes and reducing fraud is something that's on the mind of everybody who's involved in payments. And, it's really part of the suite of services that's needed to improve accuracy and reduce errors. And this is significant. This is one of what will be many. As people look at how do we protect our payments, there's encryption, tokenization, virtualization, validation, and confirmation. And so this is a significant development, Jack.
Absolutely. And within the UK, where we've just got it between banks at the moment, this payee checking is quite interesting because you can see how people don't specify the name of their account accurately. And they put in the odd apostrophe and things like that, which the banks don't actually use in their account descriptions. This is going to be a big improvement. Similarly, the ISO 20022 standard and the global race to implementation was a lovely article from Christian from Deutsche Bank about what needs to be done and what you need to keep in mind. But this has global implications moving to a completely new standard. And we've got some problems with it, but we've got some real advantages. How does it feel from your analytic end?
Yeah, I guess two things. When you said a new standard, I guess there's part of it that's new. There's part of the, ISO 20022 has been around about 18 years, so it's almost come of age, which I guess in two parts makes me realize how much there is to do and how quickly time goes on. But this idea of there are these ongoing challenges of moving to better processes and formats that have richer data that can be used in a number of ways, making that conversion in a process where there's other elements and parties to transactions that may be working with limited elements. As you communicate, not everyone's using the latest standard. And so I think this is his piece, Deutsche Bank's article here, I think is quite worth the read to think about how we're doing better on the rich data front and what that takes.
My Friedrich's article is important in the sense of he does outline what needs to be done, but he also outlines the opportunities. It's the illustration of the progress across the globe I found useful, but it also makes you realize how much more needs to be done and how many countries have still yet and how many banks have still yet to implement this new standard.
The tech debt that's out there just takes a long time to work these changes through the system because there's so much that's built up. Yeah, so really, really good piece.
Okay, so we move on then to have a look at something else which we featured, but it's been a bit like a quiet submarine underneath the surface at the moment, but it's starting to emerge. The real estate crisis through Evergrande in China is starting to bubble, and our article, really good article by Push, was highlighting the issues and I thought it was rather nice how he summed it up with saying, Moody estimates that 70% of Chinese households' wealth is tied up in real estate. And Evergrande's collapse would mean a significant drop in Chinese home prices, and it would shrink primary assets in the world's biggest middle class. But it also has a ripple effect across the global economy. And it's something we can't ignore. You in the US, we in the UK, we're going to feel this.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. I did like the balance approach and the measured. You could feel and gather the strong cautions about the Chinese real estate illiquidity just starting. It's not panic and it's not dismissive of it. It's significant, and as you said, even the U.S. Federal Reserve indicated that this I think they said could strain global financial markets through a deterioration of risk sentiment, pose risk to global economic growth, and affect the United States. So there's it's a significant size for any country, and certainly for China, and the ripple effect is worth watching. And just seeing that their debt is trading at an 80% haircut. It's trading at 20 cents on the dollar is a serious implication for those that are holding this. And like you said, the Chinese household wealth, that's very different than in a number of other countries, what percentage of individual wealth where that's held up.
The global implications could be huge. Let's hope not. But on a better note, we had 2 web chats in the last 2 weeks, which were quite fundamental. The first one was about what is cash flow forecasting all about. And with a chat with Nicholas Christian from Cashforce, we uncovered the 3 elements of what cash flow forecasting is all about: bridging the gap between finance, AR and AP, and treasury, unlocking value by improving working capital management. And then the third one was saving time and hassle. Now, what was really interesting, and it comes out in the webinar, which is well worth listening to, is the nuances around these 3 fundamental things. My overall conclusion, though, surprised me was how much a good cash flow forecasting system can really impact the company. Its ripple effect is huge and fundamental. The Kellogg story is a classic example. And then we had another one, which is a revolution, really. It's a web chat between me and Tim Nicol, the founder and CEO of Prima Dollar. Prima Dollar have invented a new way of actually recording events in real time in a supply chain. And so what they do is they issue workers either with a mobile phone, or they are given a tablet in the factory, and the workers record how they think about things in a whole range of different areas. And what's fascinating was how Tim explained how you have to understand there are different forms of blindness. There's color blindness, which I knew about, but there's also symbol blindness. So even though they use a symbol and you can move the symbol from left side to the right side where it's maximum impact, there are people who don't understand this. So they're catering for a whole range of different people. But out of this comes some fundamental things you can do with supply chain. You can start to monitor how they're behaving in not real time in the sense of every second, but Prima Dollar record it every second. But they report it once a week. But once a week in supply chain is fundamentally different. Anyway, the implications of this are going to transform supply chains, not just in the consumer garment business, but even in things like mobile phones, where workers are going to be monitored about how happy they are and so on, and a whole range of other things. Fundamentally important. And we're going to see it in not only the prima dollar internet system, but the whole range of different other supply chains as well. Very interesting.
Jack, you've been busy with these web chats, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of these. One thing that really came out that was a theme on both of these is this idea of managing data, capturing data more readily, and being able to share that. And so the example is capturing data from the factory floor and from people to be able to see, this is the ESG approach and worker satisfaction and issues. And the other is cash flow forecasting, looking at data in an organization in the cash conversion cycle to make really good additional financial decisions. So key theme there about accessing data and leveraging it for different purposes.
Absolutely. And what's important is that the implications of this are brought into the financial area in banking and cash flows and so on. So they're both going to have a fundamental impact on how treasurers manage their resources in the future. Our final thing that we're going to review is something that inevitably you do at the end of the year. And it's CTMfile featured the top 10 items in terms of number of clicks that CTMfile recorded. And it's a fascinating insight into what's the stresses and strains of treasury today.
Two things stood out. There's 10, it's in the show notes. You can read up on all the stories, but two things stood out to me, Jack. The Swift's pre-validation service, in a similar manner to the cross-border IBAN name check, this idea of pre-validating through Swift service is a great article, but it's also about, really thinking through this whole validation process and how that helps with control and security and some exciting things on Swift's side, applicable to almost every corporate organization. The second one, Jack, was the liquidity buildup of corporates, an additional $1 trillion. What does this mean? Does this refer to just extra caution? The fact that there might be, it's easier to get capital, and so let's hold it, keeping the gunpowder dry, or is it just caution? That's a pretty significant economic statement. Those are my top two of the top 10 articles.
Yeah, the $1 trillion outstanding, I think a lot of that is indicative of the caution that world business is having about the going forward, given COVID and the other problems coming up with climate change being the other major one. My take from this list was how important supply chains are to corporates in general, how 5 out of the 10 items were directly related in some way to the efficiency and effectiveness of supply chains and how they're managed. Really important. Anyway, we've had a good year, but for the last 2 weeks, what would be your takeaway here, Craig?
Jack, I was struggling because I know you ask this every time. I mean, I wanted to say economic issues are the top for me generally, and then mention things like Evergrande or some of the other items. But I think I'm going to go to the first article about the cross-border IBAN name check. This whole confirmation, fighting errors and fighting fraud. It's simple, it's efficient, it's elegant. And I think that's one of the items that brought me the most joy the last couple of weeks as we looked at all these items. So that was how I bubbled that up to my key takeaway the last couple of weeks.
My key takeaway is the invention of real-time reporting in supply chains. I never thought it was ever going to happen, but I think the implications of this are going to be huge. It's going to affect millions of workers. It's going to affect all sorts of different companies, from garment manufacturers to phone manufacturers to car manufacturers. It's totally broken new ground. I look forward to seeing the results. Anyway, thanks for your time.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasurer LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.